Hey foodies, and welcome back to Cooking with Kiana. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this easy one pan pork chop and rice recipe. It is super simple to make. We're going to be baking this in the oven. The pork chops is going to be cooked in with the rice, so you already know that rice is going to be super flavorful. If you guys are interested in this recipe, keep on watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That way you can become a part of the foodie family so you don't miss weekly recipes. Alright, so without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce these ingredients so we can get started. So for this recipe, you're going to need 1 cup of rice and 2 cups of water. 1 small onion, and you want to make sure you dice that. 3 sprigs of thyme, 1 scotch bonnet pepper, make sure you remove those seeds and chop that up finely. 1 jar of fancy pimentos, and we're going to use half of that jar. Make sure you chop that up finely as well. And if you don't know what they are, they're basically just roasted red peppers. You should be able to find them at the ethnic aisle at your local grocery store. I'm also going to be using 3 cloves of garlic as well, and 1 Maggi chicken bouillon cube. And for seasonings, I'm going to be using 2 teaspoons of Old Bay seasoning, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of complete seasoning, 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, and 1 sazon packet. And these are the 2 pork chops that I'm going to be using for this recipe. Obviously, you want to make sure you wash these off and pat them dry. Then I'm going to go ahead and drizzle a generous amount of olive oil over that pork chop, just so our seasoning could better adhere. And of course, you want to make sure you flip your pork chops over so you get both sides. Okay, so now we're going to go in with our seasoning. Just make sure you mix that seasoning up first before you apply it to your pork chop. Just because we're not going to be using all of the seasoning, we're going to save a little bit of that seasoning for later. So just go ahead and season up your pork chop to taste. You're probably only going to use about 2 to 3 tablespoons of that seasoning anyways, since these are smaller pork chops. So just go ahead and flip that pork chop over so we can season the other side. You just want to make sure you have a generous amount of seasoning on there. And then after, we're just going to go in with our hands and rub all of that seasoning in, making sure our pork chop is well seasoned. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and add our pork chops to our skillet, and your skillet should be on a medium to high heat. We just want to go ahead and get a good sear on these pork chops. We're not going to cook these all the way because these are going to cook later on in the oven. So you just want to let these sear on each side for about 3 to 4 minutes. Once your pork chops are looking nice and golden and succulent and juicy, just like this, you want to hurry up and remove it from that fire. That way they do not overcook. But yeah, guys, this is exactly what you're looking for when it comes to color. Now, after you have removed those pork chops from your pan, do not, I repeat, do not wash that pan, okay? We are going to save all of that excess seasoning that is at the bottom. I just went ahead and added in a little bit of oil, and then we added in the scotch bonnet pepper with the onions, the garlic, and the pimentos, okay? Just go ahead and give that a good stir. Let that get nice and fragrant and toasty. And then we're going to go ahead and add in our thyme. Now, this is how I add in my thyme. I just go like this, and I just pull it right from that stem. So you just want to go ahead and give that a good stir so that thyme could get nice and toasty and really bring out those flavors. I'm also going to go ahead and add in the seasoning as well. I'm going to add in maybe about a tablespoon of that leftover seasoning we had from the pork chops. So just go ahead and give that a good stir. At this point, you should be able to smell all the different aromas, and your kitchen smell lovely. So we're just gonna go ahead and give that a good stir. And then we're gonna go ahead and add in 1 cup of rice, and we're gonna stir that as well. We're gonna let this rice get nice and toasty, and it's gonna soak up all of those flavors. I'm telling you guys, toasting that rice beforehand really brings out that flavor. It also adds an extra nutty flavor to it as well. Trust me, this dish is going to be flooded with tons of flavor. So now we're going to go ahead and add in 2 cups of water. And then I'm going to take 1 Maggi bouillon cube and just go ahead and crush that up with your fingers. And we're going to add that in as well. Now go ahead and give that a good stir. And we're just going to let all of those flavors marry into each other. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and let that heat come down to a simmer. Once we get that down to a simmer, we're going to go ahead and add in our 2 pork chops. And then we're going to go ahead and cover this with foil. Make sure it's nice and tightly covered. So we could pop this in the oven on 350 for 35 minutes. So it's been about 35 minutes. I'm gonna go in and remove that foil, and we're gonna let this cook for an additional 10 minutes. So once our pork chop and rice bake is done, there is one final step, and that is just to fluff the rice. So there's two ways you can go about doing this. You can just fluff the remaining rice surrounding the pork chops. But what I like to do is I like to just remove the pork chops all together and fluff the rice. Because I don't know about y'all, but I like my rice nice and fluffy and light. So just go ahead and add the pork chops on top. And lastly, I'm just going to sprinkle some chives on top to give it a nice pop of color, as well as some additional flavor. Alright, so now that our pork chops are finally done, we can go ahead and cut into this and see what it tastes like. Well, I can go and cut into this and see what it tastes like. But as you can see, that pork chop is nice and juicy. As you can see, we added tons of flavor, tons of seasoning and herbs. That rice is nice and fluffy. Since that rice has been cooking underneath that pork chop, it gives it a nice flavor. I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. If you did, be sure to check the description box for the full recipe so you guys can make this at home. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.